What's up, everybody? This is John with John Fair Innovations, bringing you more League of Legends Worlds 2021 content. We are getting towards the final stages of this Worlds, which has been absolutely crazy. There's been a lot of upsets, there's been a lot of LCK dominance. It has truly been very unpredictable, but also very understandable of like the results that we expected as well. So very very different, very weird sort of worlds this year. And of course, we're coming to like the final stages. There's only 4 teams left now. Of course, DAM1, T1, DwG, and EDG. And we are talking today, of course, about potentially the most important semi-final in the history of League of Legends as a sport. So I want to, before I go into sort of analysis about this matchup, I want to take you back to 2017. Aphelios wasn't even a champion. There wasn't ever 200 years memes. The game was a lot simpler and a lot slower. There wasn't any turret plates. Jace was the most complicated champion, if you can believe that. And there was always this constant within League of Legends, and that was SKT winning late game. At that stage, SKT had won 3 world championships in 3 appearances. They'd won 2 MSIs in 3 appearances. They'd only ever lost 1 international best of 5 in the very famous EDG, the Morgana counter pick into Faker's undefeated LeBlanc. Like, that was the only professional game he had ever lost on the champion. And Faker, of course, was hailed as the greatest player in the world. He would go on to be considered the greatest player of all time. Named the Unkillable Demon King because it just seemed like he was this god in the mid lane that no one could touch. And the reason why I bring up 2017 is because, we had one of the most famous SKT plays of all time, which was, EDG being up 10,000 gold, which even back then was a crazy amount to be ahead by. If you're ahead by 10,000 gold, you should just easily win the game. And yet late game happened, and as I said, one of the few constants within the world was SKT's late game. And Faker's shockwave, heard around the world, took all 5 of them out at the same time. And T1 were able to come back and win that game. And that was the last great play of the SKT dynasty. They would make finals in the end. Faker would carry them again against RNG in China as well. So Uzi's RNG in China, he was able to defeat that with a crowd of, it felt like hundreds of thousands of people. They're all chanting, all screaming for RNG, and yet Faker was still able to, overcome those odds and get to the final. And of course, Samsung Galaxy with Ruler would defeat SKT. And that was the last international tournament that SKT would ever win. LCK would sort of fall off a little bit, and we would see the rise of the LPL and the LEC. And it's only until last year that now we have a new constant, which is DAM1. And DAM1 have become this team from Korea. They were these unheralded players. They were just randoms from Challenger that would go through LCK, the Challenger League, to qualify for the LCK. And their first Worlds, while they were able to get to quarterfinals, they were kind of easily defeated by G2, and people thought maybe they were a little bit overhyped. But last year, something clicked within them, and now they've become one of the most dominant teams we have ever seen in League of Legends histories. They've won the last 3 LCKs. They won Worlds last year pretty easily. They were 1 game off. Ironically enough, they were 1 game off of winning MSI, very similar to SKT's first attempt at winning MSI. And now, in this Worlds right now, they are actually undefeated coming into this semi-final. And the constant within League of Legends today is that DAM1 wins late. So this is why I wanted to bring this up, because this semi-final, it's not just about making it to the final. It's not just about winning worlds. This is going to define two dynasties, because we have, of course, the new dynasty in Damwon looking to repeat win worlds. Beating T1, going to the final, people would favor them to beat either EDG or DwG. So they would accomplish a feat that only SKT has ever accomplished, which is winning back-to-back worlds. And of course, T1, formerly known as SKT, they are the old gods. They are looking to reclaim that throne that they haven't held since 2016. So old gods versus new gods, new dynasty versus old dynasty. As I said, dynasties will be defined. Faker, greatest of all time, was former the greatest player in the world. Now that moniker goes to Showmaker, and Showmaker is seen as the best player on the planet, and they will be colliding together. So this is just, the story in this matchup is just absolutely insane. We'll see whether T1 can defend their throne and be truly considered the only international dynasty in League of Legends history, or whether Damwon continue to write a new chapter in their book on their dynasty. And we will start talking about Damwon in context to that SKT dynasty. If they go on to win this tournament, the fact that we'll start having conversations about, is the Damwon dynasty better than the SKT dynasty, is crazy to think of, because during that time and during that dominance, I never thought a team would ever be able to even come close to replicating that level of dominance. Like, you think of the fact that SKT's dominance reigned over like 5 years of international tournaments. So this is absolutely hype. So anyway, let's get into, of course, the matchups. So both these teams, they have, while they both come from the LCK, they play the game quite differently. Damwon's a bit more flexible in how they play the game as opposed to SKT, or T1 I should say. But T1, they have such an insane bot lane, so you can understand why they play more to that sort of gameplay, as opposed to, say, a Damwon. Top lane is going to be heavily contested. At the bottom there, you can see key matchups. I've got all lanes, because honestly, we've got 10 of the best players on the planet. So there's no real one or the other to say that this is going to be the most important matchup, because, you know, Damwon's bot lane could be insane, or, you know, T1's top lane could be insane, or, you know, Faker does Faker things, or Showmaker does Showmaker things, or, you know, Canyon, the John Wick of the jungle, you know, he could pop off, or Owner could be the rookie sensation that we all know him to be. So, yeah. So it's really, every matchup is key, because it kind of depends on how the teams want to draft to get their advantages, what they see the weakness, or when I say weakness, I use the term very loosely, because these two teams have very few weaknesses. They're clearly the two best teams on the planet. Top lane, Khan. So here's more story, more drama. I feel like this matchup has some of the most drama that we have seen in Worlds for quite some time, actually, because, you know, Khan, this is going to be his last ever tournament. Khan, one of the greatest domestic Korean top laners of all time. Unfortunately, though, for Khan, he hasn't had that same international success as he's had domestically. He's made it to 2 MSI finals and lost both of them, and he's also made it to semi-finals at Worlds and lost that one. So Khan looking to go out as a champion, and to many people, myself included, going out as a champion that he deserves, because he is one of the greatest players to play the game. He's the reason why I started playing top lane. I actually used to play a lot of jungle until I started seeing Khan, and then I switched to top lane because I just wanted to pop off like Khan. Kana is absolutely insane. So obviously T1's top laner. Damwon and T1 play a little bit differently. Kana is kind of put on an island a little bit more than Khan is. At this tournament, we've seen Khan have some insane numbers, but we also got to take into account that Showmaker and Canyon are leveraging their leads towards Khan because they see Khan being a big mismatch up against people like Fudge, people like Otawame, even Nuguri, which I didn't think would be a mismatch, but we saw that. And obviously in the best of 5 against Mab, we saw the mismatch with Armut. Kana, he plays a lot of things like Gwen, for example, and so a lot of people talk about Kana because Kana has the most solo kills. So he's beating their top laners 1v1 or 1v2 sometimes, as we saw in the LCK final against Damwon. But Kana's 1v1 stats do get a little bit inflated. He is an insane 1v1 player, but also at the same time, T1 do leave him a lot on his own. So that's why his solo stats will be slightly more than, say, a Khan, because Khan does get that help. So Kana, really important for T1, because if Kana is going even or slightly behind or even getting ahead, which we see him do plenty of times, that allows T1's insane bot lane, probably the best bot lane at Worlds, to really dominate, and that's where T1 can become really, really scary. Both of these players play lane really well. Both of these players play team fights really well. It's kind of like we're getting to the Squid Game part of the Worlds, because honestly, every single player we have left, they have very few weaknesses and they have very few flaws, and their champion pools are really strong. And it's just the nature of the tournament that they've got to start eliminating each other now. That either T1 or Damwon have to get eliminated because there's only 4 teams left. Jace is going to be very heavy priority this series. Both of them insane Jace players. Kana's Jace gets banned pretty much most of the time in the LCK against Kana. When it's available, he pretty much insta-locks it. And Khan, if you know anything about Khan is the OG Jace player. Like, when you hear about Korean Jace, what they're talking about is they're talking about Khan's Jace, because he's the one that really put that champion on the map and really showed people how that champion's meant to be played. Kennen we've seen is so strong in team fights, obviously has so much utility with the perma-stunning. I think Kana, out of the two of them, is the better Kennen player than Khan, but we saw in the Mad Lions series that Khan's Kennen is nothing to be laughed about. Even though he got put behind very heavily, he still was able to influence the team fights, which is what Kennen's meant to do. I think in a Jace meta, in this best of 5, it suits Khan, because I think Khan's the better Jace player than Kana. But I think if it's a Kennen meta, that suits Kana better, because I think Kana is the better Kennen player than Khan. And then obviously there is a world where both teams go, you know what, let's just ban these champions. We don't want Khan to have Jace. We don't want Kana to have Kennen. So they just get banned. When if that happens, then I see like a lot of then very safe lanes like Graves, like Gwen, these sort of champions that are very self-sufficient by themselves. The thing is about Kana and Khan is they have very similar champion pools. The difference is that, as I said, Kana kind of gets his advantages on his own while allowing the rest of the team to snowball, while Damwon, they put resources in Khan, so Khan can snowball that lead and get them the win that way. Next up, we have the jungle. Obviously, for T1, big tough ass for Owner. Owner, of course, people got to understand as well, Owner is a rookie. This is his first ever split. You would be forgiven if you looked at Owner and you thought that he's been playing in the professional scene for a very long time, because he looks like one of the best junglers we have in the world. But he's just a rookie. He actually replaced Cuz. And if you know anything about Cuz has had a very long and historic career in the LCK and is by no means like no longer a good jungler, he is still very talented, and I expect him to be picked up by another team next year. But obviously he replaced Cuz, so that just highlights the level of gameplay that owners have been showing to be able to replace someone of that quality. Now, owner really likes his assassin junglers. However, I just don't think that anyone would pick an assassin jungler into pick an assassin jungler into Canyon, because I think that's just asking for trouble. So I expect to see a lot of your typical AD bruiser junglers, like your Xin Zhao, like your Lee Sin. Lee Sin will be very heavily prioritized in this series. Lee Sin, I think, is the strongest jungler outside the assassin ones, and I don't expect, as I said, owner to be picking Talon. So then if Xin Zhao and Lee Sin are off the table, then I'd sort of look to sort of your Jarvins, your Olafs, your Poppies, these sort of these lower tier ones that still kind of do a very similar thing. Owner, he's been criticized a little bit for predictable jungle paths. I do think, though, that is also inflated by the fact a lot of that was against Harmer Life, where it's very predictable what Harmer Life want to do. So, and it's very easy to see where you can target Harmer Life. You can target them in jungle and, of course, top. And you're trying to take away resources from Chovy. So that's why I think his jungling pathing was very predictable in that sense. I do expect them to change it up a little bit, because I can't see them going into this series with all the time they've had ready to prep, and owner to just do the same jungle path that we've seen him do over and over again. Of course, though, if we are talking about jungle, we have to talk about the man, the myth, the legend himself, Canyon. Quite possibly the greatest jungler that we've ever seen, which, yeah, is up to debate. That's a different video for a different day. His Lee Sin performance against Mad in all 3 games was some of the best Lee Sin I have ever seen. And that's, you know, he was popping off when they had an advantage. He was popping off when they were they were losing. He was popping off when they were getting outscaled. It just seemed like he made Lee Sin look like it's like Kassadin, like level 16, you know, just win the game. Absolutely, really, really strong performance. Really, really great performance by Canyon. People talk about Canyon like, you know, Canyon's the boogeyman, because it just feels like it's inevitable that Canyon is going to, you know, get advantages in jungle, steal away camps from the enemy jungler, put him very behind, and then, you know, influence mid and top, which is obviously the main goal of Canyon, is to get Khan and Showmaker ahead, and then use that really strong top side, that iconic top side of Darm-1s, to be able to get advantages and snowball the game. But yeah, as I said, people talk about Canyon like he's the boogeyman, you know, but to be honest, Canyon's not the boogeyman. Canyon's the man you send to gap in the jungle, the boogeyman, because this guy, he is, to me, I think he's the best jungler of all time. And that's someone who is a League of Legends boomer, who saw the SKD dynasty, you know, who saw it all. And I honestly think that Canyon is the best jungler we've ever seen. Lee Sin, if he gets his hands on Lee Sin this series, T1 are trolling, honestly. I expect it to be either banned or first picked by T1, which again, though, gives Darm-1 so much advantage in draft, because you know you can't let him have Lee Sin. After what he did against Mad Lions, you just can't let him have it. So this gives Darm-1 advantage in draft, because you know, like, if T1, they let him have it, that feels bad. If they ban it, that feels bad. If they pick it first, you know, you would expect that Canyon would have some sort of counter pick in mind to be able to take out the Lee Sin. So very huge advantage by the fact of how strong he is on that champion. If Lee Sin does get taken off, though, I do expect like things like your Olaf, like your Trundle, Xin Zhao. The again, very very standard in this jungle meta at the moment. Because again, I don't also think that Canyon will pull out an assassin against SKT or T1, I should say. Keep calling him SKT because I'm a boomer. Next up, we have possibly the most hype match in this series, the mid lane. You've got, the unkillable Demon King against the unkillable Demon Prince, Faker versus Showmaker. They have very similar champion pools, but they play very, very differently. T1, they look to get Faker tries to use a lot more utility. So that's why you see things like, say, a Rise, for example, Twisted Fate, things that can sort of help out the team a little bit more. Showmaker is very versatile. He does play that style. We do see a lot of Twisted Fate, but if Twisted Fate gets banned against him, he'll pick like a LeBlanc, and then like just sort of carry, as we saw against FPX. He can pick Syndra, like sort of control mage that can really dominate the lane, that can just push in lane and then influence, help Canyon out in the 2v2, or move towards top lane and help out there. His Syndra play was disgusting. Oh my god, poor Humanoid. Like, that game one on his Syndra, he just did not miss. He just hit, Q. Like, he just would not miss. Like, I felt bad for Humanoid. I'm like, Humanoid is a professional player. Humanoid's, he's got a family. Come on, leave him alone, like, it's just, yeah, that was insane. Faker, if it does turn into a LeBlanc meta, we all know how great Faker's LeBlanc is. It is the stuff of nightmares. I have seen Faker turn games that should be lost, that based solely on the fact he's on LeBlanc. He is so iconic on the champion. I don't expect either player to get either LeBlanc or Twisted Fate, if I'm being honest. But there is a world where I think they would let Showmaker have LeBlanc more so than Twisted Fate. So, because I think Faker is comfortable enough to play Lissandra into LeBlanc. So that's why I think maybe Showmaker might get his hands on the LeBlanc. But yeah, I don't think Faker will get LeBlanc on the other hand. Lissandra has shown to be a very powerful counterpick into the LeBlanc. Even someone as great as Chovy was no match for Faker's Lissandra. And yeah, so what can you say about these two players that haven't been said already? These two are, two of the greatest to ever play the game. Faker, the greatest of all time. Showmaker, he is riding himself towards that level of, Mount Rushmore of greatest of all time. So, it's going to be hype, and I expect a lot of support and a lot of jungle attention in the mid lane and also in the top lane, because I think this is where both teams will see where Darmwine will want to win through. So obviously negating a lot of that will be how T1 potentially wins a series, or snowballing off that is how Darmwine, I think, wins this series. Ghost versus Gumayusi is kind of a mismatch, but people underestimate Ghost a little bit. Like, Ghost, because of a really poor MSI, people that just all of a sudden just go, oh, he's bad, he's trash. He's not. He's a really good ADC. But when you have Showmaker, when you have Canyon, when you have Khan, someone's got to play that utility. Someone's got to play that sort of secondary role to facilitate these players to carry games. And it's like, well, Ghost is a really good team player. Like, that's why he's really good on things like Ziggs that can just AFK farm, can be safe, where that way then Beryl can roam, he can then use, he can help Canyon out, he can influence with Showmaker, he can help out with Khan. Ghost also plays a lot of Jin. Again, very similar sort of concept where you're just putting out damage from very far distance. And his Jin play is really clean. Like, his Jin play, like, he's very good on the snares. He's very good on the ultimate. He doesn't really miss that much. So he's very reliable on it. And he's also a very reliable Ziggs player. So, you know, Ghost, very underestimated, I think. If he's not on Ziggs or Jin, I expect something like a Misfortune. I think he's just going to play very safe. I'd be very surprised to see something like a Draven, even though I know he's a really great Draven player. I'd be very surprised to see him on the Draven, and I'd be very surprised to see him on Aphelios as well. Gumayusi, rookie sensation. What can you say about Gumayusi that hasn't been said through this tournament? The guy is playing the best. He's been the best performing ADC at the tournament. You can't let him have Aphelios. Aphelios is way too strong. It can hard carry 1v9. And especially if we have an issue where you've got, like, you know, if you think there is issues with Ghost and Beryl in the 2v2, you can't let him have Aphelios and Keria have, like, Thresh or Leona, because that's just you're asking too much of Ghost there to, like, try and just play safe in that lane. He's going to get so much gold, he's going to get so much push, and then he would be able to 1v9, as we know 200 years has the capacity to do. I expect Aphelios to be banned. I don't expect him to get Aphelios, if I'm being honest. So with that in mind, might see some Misfortune, might see some Draven. He is a very huge Draven player. Both these players actually play a lot of Draven, and Teddy as well. So, you know, all three of them really huge Draven players. I don't expect to see Teddy unless, of course, Darm1 are up 2-0, and then T1 look to sort of change it up a bit. But if it's a close series, I don't expect to see Teddy. Unfortunately, because I am a massive Teddy fan. I am part of the Temple of Teddy, so, you know, it's a shame we haven't got to see him in this Worlds, because he is, I still think, a phenomenal ADC, and, you know, it would be great to see him. He's like Sejuani support, you know. So when Beryl's confident and when Beryl's feeling good, he is a very different player. He's a very confidence player. And we saw in that series against Mad, he was really, really feeling good. We saw the Pyke come out. I think, was it in Horizon Esports with Ashley Kang? Make sure you check out that channel because her content is absolutely insane. Some of the best content you will ever see in League of Legends. So make sure you definitely check that one out. But yeah, it was in the post-game interview, and I think he said something along the lines of he picked Pyke just because he felt like playing it. Like in a quarterfinal, like he's just like, yeah, I feel like playing some Pyke, you know. I was like, oh, because I when I play support, I usually play Pyke because Pyke is fun. And I'm thinking the Rakan matchup, I'm like, oh, you know, is it, you know, to counter the ultimate? Because obviously, you know, you can stun him on the ultimate if he comes in a certain way. You know, is it something to do with, like, the animation or the, like, is it the matchup? And he's just like, nah, I just picked it because I felt like it. So, you know, Beryl really, really feeling in good form. I've got Rakan here because I think his Rakan game the other day was absolutely insane. The predictive predictive knockups and all that, absolutely insane. Having a really great performance. And he's really sort of improving more. And as I said, looking a lot more confident in his gameplay. Leona obviously is something that always needs to be considered and banned when playing against LCK supports and LPL supports. Leona, they are all so good at the champion. And the champion just has such reliable engage. So yeah, definitely something to ban. I've got here something a little bit spicier though, because as I said, I think, you know, Beryl, he's feeling pretty confident. I was going to put Rel here because, as I said, he is a very exceptional Rel player. I think, as I said in a previous video, I'm pretty sure he only has one professional loss on the champion. So you could see a Rel. I've got here his Alistar though, because if you know anything about Beryl, he first sort of got noticed on the international scene was with an Alistair engage at Rift Rivals. And and this was sort of the first time we saw Darm1, and we sort of, and I just remember, I still have the image of him flashing in and making that play. His Alistar is something that he is very known for, and it's something that he's very comfortable on. So, if the matchup suits, I do think that it's something that he will resort to, given the fact he's feeling so confident, and he looks like he's just back to his old, roam, get mid, get top ahead, help out the jungle, and just play whatever he feels like on the day. If we are talking about supports, though, Keria is the best support on the planet. I think Keria is a better laner than Beryl. I think Beryl is a better team fight support, though, than Keria. So that's where it comes in. That's why I think things like an Alistar, a Rakan, really good on Beryl. Obviously, when we're looking at Keria, he does play a lot for his ADC. So I do expect to see Leona. As I said, LPL, LCK supports, they're all great Leona players. And Leona is one of the strongest supports we have in the game and has been for quite some time. Thresh, Keria's Thresh, absolutely insane. He continues to pop off. He had another pop-off performance on it in the Harm with Life series. And obviously, Gumayusi likes to play things like Draven and Aphelios, and Thresh is just the perfect champion to provide that peel. I've got here Braum because while I don't think it's the best champion, and not necessarily champion I think of a Keria, if the support pool gets targeted a little bit, you'll find that a lot of LCK supports, they'll sort of resort to the Braum, because Braum is very safe. It has, the shield, it has the, reliable stuns, it has the knockups. It's something that a lot of LCK supports sort of rely on when it's maybe not a favorable matchup. If there's like Jhin and Misfortune, that's something as well where Braum becomes really strong, because obviously you can block a lot of the damage from those ultimates. And it's just something I think that Keria might resort to if the champion pool gets a little bit targeted. So I've talked a bit about each lane. I've talked a little bit about the matchups. So now we come to the final part, which is the prediction. So, I'm so hyped for tonight. When I'm thinking of this, it just makes me think of the line from Lord of the Rings where Gandalf's like, we come to it at last, the great battle of our time. Because really, this is dynasties colliding. Like, it'll be a very long time before we can even get something like this, because think how long it takes for a dynasty to be formed, and how much dominance has to occur before we can start talking about teams as dynasties. So to see T1 and Darm1 colliding like this, as I said, could possibly be the most important semi-final we've ever seen, because it will define how we look at these two teams moving forward. You think of Rox Tigers, for example. There might be people listening to this who don't even know who the Rox Tigers are, but Rox Tigers were the team that always challenged T1, and they were really, really good team, but they could never get that international success, and they would always lose to T1 on the international scene. And so a lot of people do forget about that really great roster, but yeah, so we have a very similar thing, and this is giving me Rox Tigers versus T1 sort of feels like that semi-final, the Prey, Ash Arrow and all that sort of thing. I'm so hyped for this one. But anyway, I've stalled long enough. My prediction, I do think people are overhyping T1 a little bit. As someone who watched all the LCK, who watched the LCK finals, who watched every single game at Worlds, I do think T1 have had an easier schedule than Damwon. So, you know, they had DFM, they had 100 Thieves, they had Harmer Life as their quarterfinalist. While I think Harmer Life is a really good team, I think Mad Lions are a better best of 5 team than Harmer Life and will push teams more than Harmer Life will, because Harmer Life is very much Chobi or bust. So I do think people are putting in a little bit too much stock in the performances of T1, and there have been some sloppy mistakes like losing Baron Smite. Like, was it against 100 Thieves where it just like they just like, I think it was 100 Thieves where Closer just like walked in, smiked the dragon, you know, and just walked out, you know. So like things like that, just little mistakes like that, and also we don't know how they'll. Like, while they had the comfort of facing Harmer Life, a team they know they're better than, in that quarterfinal, they're going up against Damwon now, which is a whole nother beast. And a team that they have historically, even back when Khan was part of SKT, have historically never done very well. Like, they've always they've lost a lot more than they've won against T1. And even when Damwon were the rookies just out of Challenger, they always seem to more often not beat T1. I do think this series is super close. I want it to go to 5 games. I want it to be another Rocks Tigers SKT series. It's super hype. If I have to give a prediction though, I am going to go Damwon. Damwon 3-2. I just think that this meta suits Damwon so much more. I think the top lane, the mid lane, and the jungle for Damwon is just so strong. They played together so well. And while I think Gumayusi is an insane ADC, this meta is not really made for ADCs to 1v9 hard carry. And I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue for T1, because I think Ghost can negate a lot of, like, just absorb a lot of pressure, and that will allow Canyon and Khan and Showmaker to really get huge leads. We saw that in the we saw the blueprint at the LCK finals, where Ghost was playing a lot of safe stuff, and Damwon just hard camped Kana and put him so far behind, and just, you know, Khan's Camille was getting so far ahead so early, and the game's just snowballed like that. So to me, I think it's going to be Damwon 3-2. Well, there you have it. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you think T1's going to beat Damwon? Do you think Damwon's going to beat T1? Are you Faker? Are you Showmaker? This is going to be so hype. Make sure you check it out. Leave a comment below what you think is going to happen. But always, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you next time.